Today we will discuss about regulation of blood glucose level and diabetes mellitus. Regulation of blood glucose is important because it is essential to continuous supply of glucose to the brain. Even though brain can utilize ketone bodies to some extent, it has an obligatory requirement of glucose. RBC and renal medulla also depend on glucose for their fuel needs. Factors maintaining the blood glucose. It depends on the glucose entering and leaving the ECF. Second one is hormone, that is glucagon and insulin. Major factors which cause entry into glucose are absorption from intestine, glycogenolysis, gluconeogenesis, and hyperglycic hormone. It will increase the blood glucose level. Now, factors leading to the depletion of blood glucose are: first, utilization of tissue for energy, glycogen synthesis, conversion of glucose into fat, and hypoglycemic hormone, that is insulin. Here in this picture, which are the hypoglycemic factors, as we have already discussed, that is absorption from GIT, that is start to glucose, glycogenolysis in liver, that is glycogen to glucose, gluconeogenesis, amino acid to glucose formation. Which are the hyperglycemic hormones? Glucagon, adrenaline, corticosteroid, growth hormone, and thyroxine. And which are the hypoglycemic hormones? Only insulin, which carried out the glycolysis is all cell, TCA cycle in most cell, glucose to carbon dioxide and water, glycogen, that is the utilization of glucose. Now glycogen synthesis in liver and lipogenesis, all out carried out by the insulin. Normal blood glucose level in fasting condition is 70 to 1110 mg per dl, and in postprandial condition less than 140. How it is regulated? When the blood glucose level is low, pancreas has the signal which alpha cells secrete the glucagon, which increase the blood glucose level by glycogenolysis, glucose or gluconeogenesis. When blood glucose level is high, pancreas signals beta cells signals release of insulin. Now insulin will act on peripheral tissue. We take the glucose from blood. Thus the normal level of glucose is maintained. Postprandial regulation. Following a meal, glucose is absorbed from the intestine, enters the blood, rise in blood glucose stimulates the secretion of insulin by island cell of pancreas. The uptake of glucose by most extrahepatic tissue except brain is dependent on insulin. Insulin helps in storage of glucose as well as conversion to fat. Normally, after 2 to 2.5 hours after the meal, the blood glucose level falls to near fasting level. It may go down further, but it is prevented by the contributed glucose to blood. For another 3 hours, hepatic glycogenolysis, as we have discussed in first lecture, after the 2 to 3 hours, glycogen storage will provide the glucose. Glycogen is broken down to glucose, will take care of the blood sugar level. Then after, gluconeogenesis from amino acids will take up. Liver is the major organ that supplies the glucose for maintaining blood glucose level. Hormone like glucagon, epinephrine, glucocorticoids, growth hormone ACTH, and thyroxine will keep the blood glucose level from falling. They are known as anti-insulin or hypoglycemic hormones. Here in fasting stage and as well as the postprandial stage, as we have discussed. In the fasting stage, what happens? Blood glucose level is low, which will lead to high glucagon. Glucagon will increase the blood glucose level by gluconeogenesis, glycogenolysis, and increase absorption. While in case of postprandial state, in which there is already high level of glucose, so the insulin secreted from the beta cells of pancreas, so which will cause the glycogen synthesis, then glycolysis, and lipogenesis. Now, normal plasma glucose level. In normal person, fasting plasma glucose level value is 70 to 1110 mg per dl. Fasting means glucose is estimated after the overnight fast, that is 12 hours after the food. Following a meal, in normal person, glucose level does not usually rise above the 140 mg per deciliter due to prompt secretion of insulin. When the value are above the normal range, it is known as the hyperglycemia, and below the normal range known as the hypoglycemia. Hyperglycemia is harmful on long run, while the hypoglycemia, even for a short while, is dangerous, even may be fatal. The plasma values are slightly higher than whole blood glucose because RBC contains less water than the plasma. Now, sugar in urine. Normally, sugar is not secreted in urine, but if blood glucose is more than 180 mg per deciliter, urine contains the glucose, that is known as the renal threshold. The blood glucose above which glucose is excreted in urine is called the renal threshold. Effect of hormones on blood glucose level. Effect of insulin, that is hyperglycemic hormone, already discussed. Insulin facilitates the membrane transport of glucose. Facilitated diffusion of glucose is enhanced by insulin. In diabetes, this transporter is reduced. So it will insulin facilitate the peripheral utilization of glucose. By glycolysis is stimulated by insulin. The activity of key glycolytic enzyme, that is glucokinase, phosphoproteokinase, pyruvate kinase, are increased. Glycogen synthesis activated. So the insulin favors the glycogen storages. Glycogen by stimulating the enzyme glycogen synthase. Now, insulin lowers the blood glucose by promoting its utilization and storage into glucose, storage of glucose as glycogen and as well as fatty acids. By lipogenesis, gluconeogenesis is inhibited by insulin repressing key enzyme, which are the PK, pyruvate carboxylase, then PFCK, phosphoenol pyruvate carboxykinase, and glucose 6 phosphatase. Insulin inhibit glycogenolysis by favoring inactivation of glycogen phosphorylases while stimulating glycogen synthase and inhibiting glucose 6 phosphatase. Now the effect of glycogen, that is hyperglycemic hormone. It is anti-insulin in nature. It is the most potent hyperglycemic hormone. The net effect is decided by insulin-glucagon ratio. Glucagon is mainly glycogenolytic. The active form of glycogen phosphorylase is formed under the influence of glucagon. Liver is the primary target for glycogenolytic effect of glucagon. It decreases the glycogen synthesis. Gluconeogenesis is favored by glucagon inducing enzyme like PFCK, glucose 6 phosphate, and fructose 1,6 biphosphatase. Now cortisol, same effect. Hyperglycemic hormone increases the blood glucose level, increases the gluconeogenesis, and release amino acid from muscle. Epinephrine, adrenaline increases the blood glucose level, promote glycogenolysis, increases gluconeogenesis, and favors uptake of amino acids. Growth hormone increases the blood glucose level by decreasing glycolysis and mobilize fatty acid from adipose tissue. Now, diabetes mellitus. The term is derived from the Greek word dia, means through, meaning to go, and the diabetes literally means pass through. The disease causes loss of weight as its body mass is passed through the urine. And the Greek word mellitus also means sweet. It's a metabolic disease due to absolute or relative deficiency of insulin hormone. Diabetes mellitus is common clinical condition. About 10% of total population and 1/5 of persons above the age of 50 suffer from this disease. It is major cause of morbidity and mortality. Insulin deficiency lead to increased blood glucose level. In spite of this high blood glucose, tissue cannot utilize the glucose. So hence all cells are starved for the glucose. Criteria for diabetes in GTT. ग्लूकोज टॉलरेंस टेस्ट में क्राइटेरिया है, इफ द नॉर्मल पर्सन फास्टिंग कंडीशन लेस देन 110 mg per dl, 1 hour peak less than 160 mg per dl, and 2 hour after the glucose is less than 140 mg per dl in normal person. While for criteria for diagnosing diabetes mellitus, fasting level is greater than 126 mg per dl, 1 hour glucose not prescribed, and after postprandial is greater than 200 mg per dl. That is the diagnostic criteria for diabetes mellitus, in which 110 to 126 is known as the impaired GTT test. Here the fasting is 110 to 126 and 2 hour glucose is 140 to 200. That is impaired glucose tolerance test. The disease may be classified as the type 1 diabetes mellitus, type 2 diabetes mellitus, diabetes prone states, and diabetes secondary to other known causes. That is Cushing syndrome, thyrotoxicosis, drugs like steroids, beta blocker, chronic pancreatitis, hemochromatosis. Now type 1 diabetes, it is due to decreased insulin production. Circulating insulin is very low. About 10% of total diabetic patients are of type 1. These patients are dependent upon insulin injection. Onset is below 30 years of age, most commonly during the adolescence. They are prone to develop ketosis, and autoimmune basis attributed to most of the cases. Autoimmune diseases are present. Circulating antibody against the insulin is seen. Antibody against the beta cells of pancreas is present. Now type 2 diabetes mellitus. Most of the patients are type 2 diabetes mellitus. 95% of patients belong to this type. The disease is due to decreased biological response to insulin, which is known as the insulin resistance. So there is relative insulin deficiency. Here the circulating levels of insulin slightly normal or slightly elevated or slightly decreased depending on the stage of the disease. Type 2 diabetes is commonly seen in individuals above the 40 years. These patients are less prone to develop ketosis. About 60% of the people are obese. These patients are having high plasma insulin levels. Risk factors are age, obesity, alcohol, diet, family history, and lack of physical activity, etc. Now comparison of type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Here onset is less than 20 years. In type 2 onset is greater than 30 years. In type 1 weight is normal. In type 2 overweight. In type 1 decreased blood insulin. In type 2 normal or increase because there is insulin resistance. Here the insulin against the island cell antibody is seen. In type 2 no antibody is seen. Genetic. Now ketoacidosis is common in type 1. In type 2 ketoacidosis is rare. Pathogenesis in type 1 autoimmunity, so the severe insulin deficiency is there. Here insulin resistance, so the relative insulin deficiency. In isolate of cells, marked atrophy and fibrosis is seen. Here focal atrophy and amyloidosis is seen. Now diabetic prone states, that is GDM, gestational diabetes mellitus, impaired glucose tolerance, and impaired fasting glycemia. Secondary to known causes, that is genetic defect of beta cells function, decrease of exocrine pancreas, that is chronic pancreatitis, fibrocalculous pancreatitis, cystic fibrosis. Endocrinopathies, that is Cushing's disease, thyrotoxicosis, and acromegaly, drug or chemical induced, that is steroid, and infections. Now metabolic syndrome, it is characterized by abdominal obesity, hypertriglyceridemia, low HDL levels, elevated blood pressure, insulin resistance, or decreased glucose tolerance. The body cannot properly utilize glucose even in presence of normal insulin. In other words, body cannot utilize glucose efficiently. Therefore, the metabolic syndrome is also called the insulin resistance syndrome. Patients with metabolic syndrome are at increased risk of developing coronary artery disease and type 2 diabetes. Some people are genetically predisposed to insulin resistance. Acquired factor like obesity, physical inactivity can elicit the insulin resistance in those people. Most people with type 2 diabetes has the abdominal obesity. Now, metabolic syndrome, here glucose intolerance is present, so glucose cannot be utilized. Dyslipidemia, which lead to high TG and low HDL level. Here hypertension, elevated blood pressure is present. Polycystic ovarian syndrome is present. Obesity is present. Cardiovascular disease lead to cardiovascular coronary artery disease. Now, diagnosis of metabolic syndrome. This is most important. Diagnosis of metabolic syndrome. Elevated waist circumference for men, it is equal to or greater than 40 inches, and for female it is equal to or greater than 35 inches. Elevated triglyceride level equal to or greater than 150 mg per deciliter. Reduce HDL for cholesterol for men less than 40 mg per deciliter, for women less than 50 mg per deciliter. Elevated blood pressure that is equal to or greater than 130 by 85 mmHg. Elevated fasting glucose equal to or greater than 100 mg per deciliters. Management of metabolic syndrome. First one is the main is weight loss to achieve a desirable weight. Second is moderate exercise every day, and third, reduce intake of saturated fat, fatty acid, cholesterol and trans fatty acids. मेटाबॉलिक डिरेंजमेंट इन डायबिटीज में क्या होता है? एक्यूट कॉम्प्लिकेशंस ऑफ मेटाबॉलिक डिरेंजमेंट इन डायबिटीज. फर्स्ट वन, डिरेंजमेंट इन कार्बोहाइड्रेट मेटाबॉलिज्म. As we have seen already, insulin deficiency decreases the uptake of glucose by cells. Insulin dependent enzymes are less active. Net effect is inhibition of glycolysis and stimulation of gluconeogenesis, leading to hyperglycemia. Now, derangement in fat metabolism. Here fatty acid broken down because glucose is not utilized, so the fatty acid breakdown lead to the high fatty acid levels of plasma and consequently deposited in liver, lead to fatty livers. More acetyl-CoA is not available, which cannot be efficiently oxidized through the TCA cycle because the availability of oxaloacetate is low because it is utilized for the gluconeogenesis. So the oxaloacetate low, so acetyl-CoA will go to the ketone formation. The excess of acetyl-CoA therefore is diverted to ketone body formation, leading to the ketogenesis. This tendency is more in type 1 diabetes. There is hyperlipidemia due to increased free fatty acid level, especially increase in non-esterified fatty acid, triglyceride and cholesterol in plasma. Now, derangement of protein metabolism. Increased breakdown of protein amino acid for providing substrate for gluconeogenesis, which is stimulated by the insulin deficiency, is responsible for the muscle wasting. In this picture, skeletal muscle will break down, provide amino acid for gluconeogenesis. So here oxaloacetate will not enough for the TCA cycle, so which will lead to acetyl-CoA increase. Acetyl-CoA is not available. Acetyl-CoA will not enter into the TCA cycle. So acetyl-CoA will go to utilize for the ketone body formation, which will lead to ketosis. Now, clinical presentation of diabetes mellitus. Cardinal symptoms of diabetes mellitus. When the blood glucose exceeds the level of renal threshold, glucose is excreted in urine, that is 180 mg per deciliter. There is glucosuria is present. Glucose is present in urine. Due to osmolar effect, more water accompanies glucose, so lead to polyuria. To compensate for this loss of water, thrust center activated, lead to more water intake, polydipsia. To compensate for the loss of glucose and protein, patient will take more food, that is known as the polyphagia. This is the cardinals of glucosuria, polyuria, polydipsia and polyphagia and weight loss. There is chronic recurrent infection such as boil, abscesses, etc. Any person with recurrent infection should be investigated for diabetes. When the blood glucose level in ECF fluid is increased, bacteria get good nutrition from their multiplication. At the same time, macrophage function is in the host is insufficient due to the lack of effective utilization of glucose. Now, pathophysiology. A blood glucose level become elevated, it is hyperglycemia. Glucose is excreted in urine and excessive urination occurs due to the osmotic diuresis. Increased fluid loss lead to dehydration, so which lead to polydipsia. Since cells are starved of glucose, the patient experience increased hunger, that is known as the polyphagia, and paradoxically diabetic patient often lose weight due to the protein breakdown. Now, complication of diabetes. First one is acute complication, that is diabetic ketoacidosis. It is more common in type 1 diabetes as oxaloacetate is diverted to gluconeogenesis. TCA cycle cannot consume all acetyl-CoA, so acetyl-CoA will increase. Now acetyl-CoA will switch over to ketone body formation. This lead to accumulation of ketone bodies in blood, that is condition known as the ketonemia. Now excessive ketone bodies are excreted in urine, that is condition is known as the ketonuria. The presence of ketone body in urine can be detected by Rotheras test. The accumulation of ketone bodies lowers the plasma pH, so metabolic ketoacidosis occurs. This is known as the diabetic ketoacidosis. There is smell of acetone on breath. Then is known the typical breathing is called the Kussmaul's respiration. It is due to the compensatory hyperventilation. If not treated promptly, the condition may be fatal. Mainstay of treatment diabetic ketoacidosis are parenteral administration of insulin and glucose by intravenous route to control the diabetes. Second is to correct the pH is intravenous bicarbonate. Third one is the correction of water is an electrolyte balanced by normal saline, and treatment of precipitating cause of infection by antibiotics. Here starvation or differentiation of starvation and diabetes. Here in both conditions there is ketone bodies present, but in starvation blood glucose is not elevated, while in diabetes mellitus blood glucose is elevated. Now hyperosmolar non-ketotic coma. It can result due to the elevation of glucose to very high level greater than 900. This would increase the osmolality of ECF. Osmotic diuresis lead to water electrolyte depletion, and the coma result from dehydration of cerebral cells due to the hypertonicity of ECF, extracellular fluid. Now chronic complication of diabetes mellitus. First one, vascular disease. Atherosclerosis, plaque formation followed by intravascular thrombosis may take place. This can lead to paralysis if it is occur in a cerebral vessels. If it is in coronary arteries, which lead to the MI attack, myocardial infarction. In small vessels, the process called the microangiopathy. Now complication in eye. Early development of cataract of lens is due to the increased rate of sorbitol formation caused by hyperglycemia. Glucose level is high, so excess glucose is converted to sorbitol in eye. Retinal microangiopathy can lead to retinopathy and blindness. And neuropathy, peripheral neuropathy, which with paresthesia is very common, decreased glucose utilization and its diversion to sorbitol in Schwann cells may cause for neuropathy. Now laboratory investigations in diabetes. First one is blood glucose level, blood sugar level. For monitoring diabetic patient, periodic checking of fasting and postprandial sugar are to be done at least once in 3 months. Sugar should be within the normal limits. Second one is complete lipid profile. Third one is kidney function test. Fourth one is microalbuminuria and frank albuminuria. Presence of albumin, that is between the 50 to 300 mg per deciliter in urine, is known as the microalbuminuria. It is predictor of progressive renal damage. Albumin greater than 300 mg per day indicate over diabetic nephropathy. Fifth investigation is glycated hemoglobin, which is very important. The best index of long-term control of glucose is measurement of glycated hemoglobin or glycohemoglobin, or known as the HbA1. Enzymatic addition of glucose is known as glycation, while non-enzymatic is known as the glycation. Enzymatic known as the glycosylation and non-enzymatic known as the glycation. When there is hyperglycemia, the protein may undergo glycation. The glucose forms the skip base with the N-terminal amino group of protein. When once attached, glucose is not removed from the hemoglobin, therefore it remains throughout the lifespan of RBC, that is 120 days. The glycated hemoglobin are together called the HbA1 fraction. Out of this molecule, 81% are HbA1c, where glucose attached to N-terminal valine of beta chain of hemoglobin. Interpretation of HbA1c values. The determination is not for diagnosis, but is only for the monitoring the response to treatment. Normally, the HbA1c level is about 4 to 7% percentage, but in diabetes it is increased to 8 to 15%. The HbA1c level reveals the mean glucose level over the period of 10 to 12 weeks. It is unaffected by recent changes in blood glucose level. An elevated HbA1c indicates poor control of diabetes mellitus. The risk of long-term complication proportionally increase. The estimation should be done at least every 3 months in all patients on treatment. Glycolated values below 7% indicate adequate control of diabetic states. Now, management of diabetes. First one is diet and exercise. This is the first line of treatment. A diabetic patient is advised to have balanced diet with high protein content, low calorie, devoid of refined sugar, low saturated fats, adequate PUFA, low cholesterol, and sufficient quantity of fiber. Second one is oral hypoglycemic drugs. These are mainly used in type 2 diabetes. Third one is insulin injection, mainly useful in the type 1 diabetes. Thank you.